Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we're joined by Randy Yu. Randy is the Chief People Officer at Misumi, USA. Randy, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks so much, Chris. It's great to be here. I'm doing great.
Well, I'm glad we finally made it happen. I'm sorry for the delay.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Well, look, Randy, let our listeners know a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I've been in the HR profession for about 18 years now, but my journey actually started quite differently. I'm an engineer by training. I have a degree in mechanical engineering. I have a master's degree.
That's a first, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
Sure. Right. Just throwing that out there.
I'm a bit of an oddity. Yeah, I'm a bit of an oddity. When people see what my background is, they always ask me, how in the hell did you get into human resources? And I always tell people, as much as I'd like to say that I had a plan and that it was well thought out and I was strategic about managing my career, I confess that it really wasn't quite that, because it really wasn't that brilliant. I like to say that I really stumbled into HR. I had done about 5 years in various engineering roles. I had done about 4 years in business, and I was looking for a developmental opportunity. There was a strong push for me to go into marketing, but I really didn't feel a strong draw. I didn't feel a strong attraction for that. And along the way, I was also teaching a Taekwondo class, and I really enjoyed. I found out how much I had a passion for motivating people, pushing people, trying to get the most out of people, especially when they didn't think that they could give any more. And so, Chris, I like to tell people I've made this very loose connection between that and human resources. Really didn't know a lot about the function, but I knew enough to think that maybe my experiences in engineering and in business, maybe I could learn the HR function. And so where I was employed at the time, they took a chance on me and said, you know what, you don't have any of the academic pedigree. You've never worked in the HR function, but we do like the fact that you seem to have this passion around people. And we like the fact that you've done a lot of different jobs. And so let's take a chance on you. And so I was fortunate enough to have gotten that opportunity and have really never looked back since.
Made a very interesting point about the martial arts. What did you take away from what you've learned in martial arts, and how did that help you in HR?
Sure. So the way I taught my classes, very intense, very physically challenging. And oftentimes at the end of the class, I would say to my students, I'd say, you know, can I just get 20 more kicks? Can I just get 20 more push-ups? Can I just get a little bit more? And you'd hear the groans. And people would say, oh, you know, I've given it all I have. I've got nothing left in the tank. But I don't ever recall when it came right down to it, I always got those 20 kicks. I always got those 20 push-ups. So my realization was, you know, most times people have more in the tank than they think, they have more to give than they think they have. And it just takes the right buttons to be pushed. It needs somebody to ask. It needs somebody to nudge, encourage, sometimes demand. But once they realized they could actually do it, you know, it was sort of an epiphany. You know, I think in general, we often have more in the tank than we let ourselves believe. It's a lot easier to stop, right, than it is to give
100%. I think that's the importance of coaching as well, though, right? If I look at the coaches that I had that pushed me, like you did with your students, that pushed me that step further than I ever would, most of the times we won't do it ourselves. We do need a support network or a manager or a coach or a sensei, in your example, that's going to push you that one step further and challenge you. It's why a lot of people do well with personal trainers, for example.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Really? Yeah, exactly, right? You get pushed that one step further. And I'm similar with a team environment, whereas when I'm in a team environment, I always push myself that little bit further than I would on my own. So I like training with other people as opposed to just myself, because I won't push myself to that limit. We need to try and bring that more into the workplace as well.
Well, and I think that's why you hear a lot today of, you know, leaders as coaches, managers as coaches, right? Because it's more than just about managing the day-to-day performance, but it's how do you get the most out of people, and how do you, teach some lessons that are not just for a specific assignment, but how will it make them better professionals throughout their entire careers, not just for a specific task or a specific project. And when you can find great managers and great coaches and great leaders who can do that, you've really struck gold.
So where we are now, what really occupies your mind on a day-to-day basis? What's the main focus at the moment? Let me change the question actually. What are you currently obsessed with?
Yeah, there are many. A lot of it is around talent development, talent acquisition. How do we get great people in the door, and how do we continue to allow them to be great and be even greater? I think that's always a challenge that anybody that works in not only in human resources, but in a management role for any company is, how do we do that? Right? The challenge and the responsibility doesn't stop just when you get great talent in the door, right? It's how do we continually help that person to optimize and maximize their contribution to the company.
Yeah. So what's the biggest challenge for you in terms of attracting people to the business?
Brand awareness, name brand awareness, right? Getting the message out on who we are. The thing that's interesting is it's a very competitive labor market right now, right? We're seeing unemployment at very, very low levels, right? And so it is now, as I call it, it's a seller's market, right? It wasn't like it was a few years ago when unemployment was really high and employers had their pick of the litter of who they wanted to hire. It's really flipped 180 now. And so it's how do you present your company in the best positive light? The role of talent acquisition and the importance of salesmanship in marketing in your recruiting efforts is probably more important now than it's been in a long time.
Yeah, we've seen it, haven't we? Now, we had a few episodes recently on the podcast, and also our live show around I think HR needs to work a lot closer with marketing.
Yeah.
Well, and almost maybe have someone in the team who's basically just focused purely on your brand awareness, whether it's your Glassdoor, whether it's your social media posts on LinkedIn. It needs to be more than just a job ad, and you have to have multiple touch points with them as well, right?
There's no question. Yeah, there's no question. The role of social media has changed, and it's changed really, really fast, right? So things like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, even Facebook, Twitter, those are all places where companies potentially have a presence.
What are some of the things that you've done to try and keep up to date and attract these guys on? So do you use social media?
We do.
Store and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think our first step really has been making sure that we have a presence and making sure that we put our company name out there. And that people know who we are, and that it's not just a place where we have our name, but it actually showcases
exactly
and highlights who we are, what our company does, and also what does it mean to be an employee here.
Is that written, audio, video? What have you experimented? What have you experimented so far?
Yeah, I think it's all the above. It's written, right? There's the standard text that you put on there. Mm-hmm. There's photographs, there's pictures. I think there's videos. So it's all of those things that can give people insight into who your company is. I think the other thing is you've got to find ways that will, grab people's attention and keep it. And you don't have a lot of time. It's not like people are going to sit there and watch a 20-minute video on who your company is, right? You've got maybe a couple minutes. And you start to see that a lot on LinkedIn, right? You see a lot of people now, individuals who will go on LinkedIn and put a 2-minute video of themselves, a 3-minute video of themselves, trying to gain their own personal brand awareness. And I think companies have to do exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like we're on the cusp, even though video has been around for a while now. You're starting to see it used more by individuals. And so I think you're going to see even more of that in the weeks and years to come, more and more.
I see it every day. And it's also how people communicate now. You think about the potential talent that you're going after. This is how they consume content. So if you're putting up a big, a job spec, which is, 2 pages long, you're not going to attract those guys, because they would rather watch a 1-minute video of someone talking about it, right? Or a 30-second video. And I think for someone like yourself, who's great, we've spoken before on outside of the show, it'd be amazing for you to interview some of your leadership team and talk about their why and their personal values and their mission statement for the business. You interviewing them and posting that on your LinkedIn, that will do wonders. And it's not, it's not an about us video, right?
Yeah.
Because no one's going to sit there. Right. It's you speaking to your leadership team. And for me, if I'm going to apply for an organization and I've seen that video before, or I find that online whilst researching who is this company that I may work for, you come across those videos with the marketing director, with the CEO, maybe a new starter, right? 6 months in, what was my experience? Do a short video podcast with them. Not only is it going to be amazing for the people that you're looking to attract, but it's also incredible for the people in the business. I challenge you to do that. You should definitely do one.
Okay. I accept your challenge.
Go to the CEO. Look, we're going to interview you on the podcast. We're going to talk about what your vision is for the organization, where we're heading, why you should join us, why this is a great place to work. Honestly, I feel like that would be incredible. I know we went a bit off topic there, but it's very interesting.
No, I think, again, when you go back to the fact that the labor market is as robust as it is right now, and hard to say where it's going to go, but when it's as healthy as it is at this moment, people are in a much better position to ask those questions, right? It's not about just having a job. It's about, what can I get passionate around? I want to love what I do, but I also want to love the company that I do it for. And I think now, much more so than in past years, people are in a position to ask those questions. And
are you seeing that of people you interview? What are some of the common questions they're asking you in interviews, which you've seen quite a shift since then?
I think a lot of people just want to, they want to understand in general, and this is every place I've been, and I'd say the last few years, but they want to know what the company's mission is. They want to know.
It's interesting though, because when I was younger, we would never have answered that question. In any of the interviews I ever went to, maybe it's just me, but I know a lot of friends that's not normally what you're going to be asking. Maybe it's just me, but
well, it's interesting because you can sort of take it from the top down, right? So you can say, here's what the company does, here's our mission at the macro level, and then as you start to break it down, you can start to show how what the company is trying to do, how does it tie to your specific role, and what does that mean for you in terms of your ability to contribute to the mission, but also to grow professionally and personally. So I think if you can put all those things together, it's what creates the value proposition for people when they're considering your company versus any other company, including potentially the company that they're working for today.
How have you connected that? Because I know many leaders struggle to connect the business why, value, mission statement with each employee's contribution. And it's really tough, but we all know that, when people understand how they're contributing, that they're more motivated, they work harder, they're engaged, when they understand what they're contributing to the bottom line or the bigger picture. How have you managed to do that in your organization?
Understanding what the mission is, understanding what we're trying to achieve. And then really, like I said, it's just tying it back to how your specific department or your specific function, what role do they play in that? And then what role do you as an individual, how do you contribute to that? And I think if you can articulate that in a logical and concise way, and I don't want to say it's just pure logic, because it's also about bringing out the passion in people to see, but being able to see how those pieces all tie together, I think is what engages people when they can see that, hey, I'm not just doing a job, I'm actually contributing to a much bigger mission that's bigger than just me. It's not just my department, it's the total company, and I have a role to play in that.
So we know that this is going to have a big effect on, or it's already having a big effect on what HR looks like, right? Modern day HR. It's changed dramatically, right? We're now talking about things like predictive and prescriptive analytics. Things have come a long way in the last sort of few years, to be honest. It's dramatically changed. What skills do you believe will be more important for HR leaders to have in the future?
Yeah, I think the data piece for sure. And when you think about it, other functions, marketing, finance, engineering, everybody's been always used data to help drive their decision making or to try to predict what's going to happen in the future. And HR needs to do the same thing. There's no question. I think, and the data is available. I think in the past, maybe it wasn't as available, but now with all the systems, data is in the cloud, people are much more able to just grab that data and do things with it and turn it into useful information. So I think that's a given. The other thing that I think is critically important, and this goes back to something we were talking about earlier, is about understanding the business. So as an HR professional, you have to understand what's going on in the business. You have to be able to connect those dots, right? So when you're having those conversations with candidates, or if you're working with an internal customer, the better you understand the business and you understand their business, the better collaborator you are, as opposed to somebody who's just going to take their direction and go and execute it. That's the traditional view of HR, right? We decide what the strategy is, you go and execute it. Whereas now I think if for HR to be really successful, you've got to have that business perspective. You've got to be a strategic thinker. The one thing I don't think will go away is, HR, we are charged to contemplate what is the impact on the person or the persons in the organization, right? So you might come up with a plan that requires you to do something operationally for the organization, a restructuring, a consolidation, an M&A. That's all fine, and that's not going to change. But somebody's got to be thinking about how is this going to impact people, I think that will be and should continue to be a role for HR to play. Right.
Yeah.
But our job is to tie all that together, right?
It's very tough. It's honestly, I feel like HR has got such a tough job in organizations, because you're balancing the digital transformation, you're balancing obviously all of the technology, then you're balancing the actual human, and the impact on the individuals, the health and well-being, and the culture, etc. So it's two very contrasting, because other departments don't have to manage that part to that extent. If they're managing a digital transformation in their department, or merger and acquisition, that they don't have to worry about that, where you're worrying about all elements and having to deal with. It's a very interesting dynamic that's now been created.
No, there's no question, Chris, and it's challenging, but for me, I think as HR leaders, we should embrace that challenge, right? Because the other alternative is to not consider it at all, right? And then the organizational things happen, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. But if you don't contemplate the impact on the people, those are the kinds of things that have downstream consequences that you can't fix once they happen, right? Or you're stuck reacting to them, as opposed to having proactively tried to anticipate and plan for the impact and the reaction from the people. And I think the better you are at getting it, and it's no different from anything else, right? The better you can get ahead of what's going to happen and try to anticipate and plan for what's going to happen, I think the more successful you'll be.
Just out of interest, for yourself and the leadership team, how do you ensure that your own vision and strategy in HR stays in line with your CEOs and the business? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, I think there has to be a constant line of communication, and that's always been sort of a standard operating procedure. That what you do in HR, what you do in finance, what you do in any other department has to tie into the total strategy, the total business vision.
It's essential now, really. We had a situation in the previous company I worked in where one of the sales guys that left, he was contributing 40% to the revenue, to the sales, right? And all of a sudden, no one thought about what if he leaves? What 40%, which is in the millions, by the way, of the revenue, and no one really thought about the impact that it would have until it actually happened, and everyone was like looking at each other like, well, we're not planned for this at all. It's having a big
Yeah.
and we see it all
No.
the time, shifts in different industries, and one product could be hot one day and next day not at all. It could be completely disrupted. We've seen it happen with the Ubers and the Airbnbs of this world and everything else, Netflixes, etc. You just don't know where that next disruption is going to come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
And it all happens so fast, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not able to adjust very, very quickly, you'll suffer the consequences. There's no question.
It's one of the reasons why I never benchmark. It's going to sound pretty crazy, but I never benchmark myself against competitors. Because if I'm only ever looking at what my competition's doing and what they're doing and focusing my attention there, then I'm not innovating.
Yeah.
And so, and when I say it to a lot of people, because it's crazy, because I run a company which helps companies get together that are of similar industries and benchmark. Right? That's what I do a lot of times. But I'm always constantly looking at other industry sectors, completely the opposite of what we do. And some of the best innovations and ideas I've ever had have come out from constantly. Every day, I'm looking at, trying to disrupt us as a business.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing as well at the same time. You don't feel like you're clinging on and waiting for that moment where you are disrupted. And a lot of companies are sitting there just hoping that nothing goes wrong and we're fine. Whereas the others are really taking the reins and going in. I'm seeing companies that have nothing to do with particular industries launch products in spaces that have never been known for. It's incredible. And I love it. And a lot of the infrastructure that they've built in that business immediately you can transfer to a new industry or new product and support that.
Well, you have a tremendous advantage in being where you are, in that you can be very nimble, you can be very agile, and I really like what you said about not benchmarking just your competition, because it's sort of like that just means you're going to be doing what everybody else
exactly. Then you stand out, right? It seems obvious, but not a lot of people don't think about that way.
Yeah, your challenge is to find out, it doesn't have to be in the HR space, right? It has to be in some other space where you can translate the innovative ideas in other areas and use that to your advantage.
I do have that advantage, you are right, where I can, experiment, fail fast, learn quickly, and move on. And I think that's key to any business right now to be successful.
Well, I agree. I think that's so critical, is that you can innovate. And I think that's going to be something you're going to continue to have to do in your line of work. But two, that it's either going to work or it's not going to work. And if you learn quickly that it doesn't work, you can very easily move on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a critical thing, is being able to fail fast, learn from it, and move on to the next idea.
Do you feel like you've encouraged that in your business? Because I feel like a lot of companies talk about that, saying they want their employees to give them that free, like Google, they're notorious for it, right? Giving people their own time to experiment on projects. They encourage failure almost. They reward it. They say, great, if you're not failing, then you're not moving forward. We're not innovating, right? Is that something you've tried to instill in the business? And if so, how?
Yeah, I would say for me personally, it's more about, from a personal growth perspective, is learn, don't do nothing, pick a way. And then if it works, great, you learn from it. If it doesn't work, you move on. I would say that's more, for me, something that I encourage people to do on a personal level. But I absolutely think it translates into what an organization can and should do.
Mm-hmm. You have to. I think I encourage even I've just got 2 new guys that have just joined us. It's a big deal for us, for a small team. So hiring 2 people is actually huge for us. Yeah. And when I was saying to them, I want you to come to me with any ideas you have. If you don't like some of the things I'm working on, let me know. Like, we have a meeting every single week where I take ideas from the team, and they also challenge what I'm doing, because I want to constantly be challenging what we're doing and innovating. And what I love about new people is they ask those questions that people don't normally do. They ask, why? And I'm like, yeah, maybe I don't know why, right? And I love those, like when you ask a child, when that children ask you those questions about the curiosity that comes with that. And I love it, because some of the things that I thought have been the best ideas ever, some of my new guys that have that outside perspective that have just come into my business said, actually, that's not how I think we should do it, and this is why. And I've been like, amazing. But the more I encourage them to challenge me and to challenge what we're doing, some incredible things are happening at the moment, and it's quite refreshing.
Well, I think especially in your position as the founder is, you're in a position to create that environment, and that's so critical. So all the people that you have come in and join your company feel like it's okay to come in and ask those questions, which I think is such a critical role of leadership, is to invite, challenges and invite, potentially disagreements, because hopefully when you're forced to answer some of those questions, or that you
Yeah.
entertain some of those different perspectives, you come out with a better solution than maybe the one solution that you came up with on your own. Right. I think there's a lot that can be gained when you have multiple perspectives. And that's a whole, this is a totally other subject, but
Yeah, you're right, but it's huge.
about diversity, right?
Yeah.
Diversity, there's sort of like the
Diversity of
traditional
perspective.
views of diversity, but if you think about diversity of ideas and diversity of thought, that's usually what you're looking for when you want to try to come up with the best course of action. Is let's hear what everybody's ideas are, and synthesize those into a best course of action, which
Yeah.
hopefully is better than the course of action any one of those people would have come up with on their own.
And sometimes you're just shocked, honestly. Like one of the ideas we came up with, we launched a virtual workshop series, because everyone kept telling me, Chris, as you know, for yourself as a chief people officer and the CHROs listening to the show, to get, 100 of you guys in one room for a day is tough. Diaries, commitments, families, people don't want to travel, etc. It's tough. Budgets, everything that goes along with it. And I said to Shane, let's launch a virtual workshop where we have, 100 guys on a virtual call on Zoom, like we are now.
Yep.
And we'll create the same program, and everyone will want to join us because it allowed them to network, benchmark, and learn from their office and have incredible conversations with leaders all over the world. And one thing I was fascinated by, I'm going to have Randy Yu in, where are you based, Randy?
Schaumburg, Illinois.
You're in Illinois networking with the CHRO of, Airbnb in California, and a CHRO from Bosch in Germany. Yeah. So you've got these incredible people from all over the world networking and benchmarking, same roles, different cultures, different industries. And that immediately, when we launched that, I realized was the reason why people loved the experience. Because I was getting to network and benchmark with people in different cultures, backgrounds, products, etc. And from the comfort of their office, right? So it seemed like a crazy idea at the time that people would both pay for that service and be willing to jump on for an hour every month to join our but now it's a huge part of our business. And it's something that we love doing, and it brings together all the members. Well, look, that leads us quite nicely on to the quick fire round, Randy, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What was the number?
I think I'm ready.
You think you're ready? No one's ever ready. What was the one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR leader?
I think it was being willing to put myself out there and be a leader. I was a leader when I was teaching martial arts. When I moved in the HR world, I for whatever reason, I kept those two things separate. And it wasn't until I realized how important it was to be a leader that I think I was able to take that on as a chief HR leader.
What's the best piece of business advice you ever received?
Learn the business as an HR firm. Know the business and give everything you have. I still believe this, that to be successful, you still want to be like the hardest working person, and that nobody can look at you and say that anybody else works harder than you do.
What's one book do you recommend to our audience, and why?
The first one that came to mind is The World is Flat, even though it's a little bit dated now, but it's a book that was written, that talked about how technology really bridged the gap. I think the author is Thomas Friedman.
Amazing. That's not been mentioned yet, so I'll definitely link that up for everyone. What could you share one internet resource that you use?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm a news junkie, but I'm constantly reading what's going on both in the world, as well as what's going on in the business world, as well as what's going on in the field of HR. So I can't get enough.
In terms of your own business right now, what's one thing about your business that you're most excited about today?
I think it's just the opportunity to grow. There are great challenges, great opportunities to grow. And it's really fun and it's really challenging to try to get the best people on board. And like I mentioned to you earlier, it's getting great talent on board and then helping that talent be literally the most it can possibly be in terms of how how it benefits the company and how it benefits their personal and professional growth. That's really exciting, and that gets me excited every day.
Fantastic. Well, look, we really appreciate you being an amazing guest, Randy. We got a bit carried away with some of the discussions there.
That's okay.
This is the exciting part where I love having people like yourself on the show. So it's really, really, really refreshing. Before we part ways, give our guests one parting piece of guidance for other HR leaders out there, and also the best way for us to get in contact with you if we need to.
Sure. I would say number one, the two things really is know your business, learn the business, be a business leader and not just an HR leader. That's the first thing. And I think if you can take your knowledge of the business and combine that with your expertise and your passions and your experiences as an HR leader, you become a very formidable force for your company and for the people that are in your company. And I think you can establish, true leadership if you can do those things.
Fantastic. Well, look, Randy, we appreciate you joining us on the show. Guys, make sure you head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find all the show notes from the episode, everything we were talking about, links, timestamps, all of the resources, everything you need. Randy, thank you again for sharing your journey with us, and I wish you all the best until we next speak.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed the time.